Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Yay, thank you so much for coming. This is so great. So, thank you for joining us at our National Adjunct Walkout Day teach-in. For those of you who were just minding your own business in the lounge before we arrived, thank you for your indulgence. We promise this won't take too long, and we would love it if you stayed and learned about this issue that affects you as much as it does the rest of the college community. I want to start by thanking everybody at RVCC, and there are very many people who have in so many ways already shown support for the adjunct faculty. So on behalf of all of the adjuncts, I want to say thank you. The issue we are here to talk about is a systemic one. It is not about personal decisions, and our protest is not aimed at individuals, but rather at systems. So I especially want to thank the full-time faculty who have been so supportive. In some schools that has not really been the culture. There's been a lot of divisiveness, but this is really an issue that could bring us all together, and here that's what it's doing, and I'm very grateful to that personally, and I think I speak for the other adjuncts as well. So allow me to very briefly outline the topics we are here to discuss. You may have heard this already this week, but if you'll indulge me in this moment, adjunct faculty, just to define this term we're throwing around, are part-time college instructors and professors. At RVCC, we make up 75% of the faculty. This is in line with national trends. In fact, nationwide, almost half of all professors are part-time, according to the American Association of University Professors. This situation obviously impacts the adjuncts themselves, but it also impacts the entire college community, including students. I want to share just one story that I think says so much about why this issue is important. A few years ago, I got into an ill-advised Facebook argument with a friend of a friend, and I do think all such arguments are ill-advised, but they happen nonetheless on occasion. And during the course of the argument, I said that the adjunct issue is a problem in part because so many college professors are not making a living wage. He replied that this isn't a problem because part-time work was never meant to provide a living wage. We went back and forth about that, and I made some points that I thought were good ones. But ultimately, he returned with, if you don't like the position you're in, then maybe you've made bad life decisions. I've thought about that statement many times since he said that. To me, it encapsulates so much about why the adjunct issue is a serious problem for all of us. And really for the whole community, not just the college community, but the counties that we are in, the state that we are in. Being a college professor shouldn't amount to a bad life decision. So, with that in mind, thank you again for coming. Please take an apple or a snack. We have petitions going around for you to read, and if you feel so inclined, to sign. We also have copies of some of the articles that have been in the news about adjuncts lately. And finally, we have a few presentations, and then we will open the floor for questions, statements, and etc. So next up is Carl Linsku. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carl Linsku. I teach history here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of the broader context for this, a little bit of the history as to how we got here with such dependence on our contingent labor system. And obviously, as Alexa outlined, and by the way, she did so much work to make this happen. Can we just say thank you? As she outlined, we're here to raise awareness about the system of contingent labor, adjunct labor, our academic labor system. And we want to sort of make clear, especially to you students, that the conditions that we all work in are the conditions that you learn in, right? So these are some reasons we're going to pose some ideas and questions about why you might actually care about the state of the academic labor force, okay? So Alexa mentioned this, I just want to reiterate. Today, roughly 3/4 of our faculty here at this institution and nationwide are adjunct or contingent laborers, contingent faculty members. This means they're hired on a contract basis, usually semester by semester. They're non-tenure, and they'll never become eligible for tenure. They get paid per class. And if they're even able to cobble together enough positions to sort of work the equivalent of full-time, they're definitely not making a living wage, far from it. They've got almost no job security at all. They often wonder if they'll be even employed next semester. They don't get any benefits, even if they're working the equivalent of full-time work. And adjuncts, like an increasing number of Americans working at Walmart and in lots of other low-wage jobs, are these sort of vulnerable people, and increasingly in our society, that we might term the precariat. Okay, so what is the precariat? The precariat is a class of working people that's ever growing, that occupies a precarious existence, close to the margins, social and economic, right? And so, for example, I was an adjunct for many years at the City University of New York. I did an interview for a newspaper one time, and the title of the article was CUNY's Migrant Laborers, because they were like, these are like academic migrant laborers that go here and there. They have no sort of meaningful existence. They fly all around and they try to make a living, right? Okay, so I'm a historian, so let me say some things about the history. It wasn't always like this. Okay? We didn't always so rely on contingent labor in our institutions of higher education. In fact, it wasn't only until about the last 30 to 40 years, since about the 1970s, that we started this slide toward contingency in our academic labor force. And actually, I want to make the argument this is related to a much broader trend and transformation of our society. Since the 1970s, we've seen the ascendance of corporate capitalism, or the corporatization of our society. And so what has this meant? Throughout the economy, there's increasing numbers of low-wage, vulnerable, precarious workers. There's been, since the 1970s, an evisceration of the labor movement. So any sort of protections you have on the job are disappearing quickly. Attempts to bring an increasing amount of discipline to the workforce is happening here. That's a function of contingency, and that's been happening lots of places elsewhere. And the fruits of all this restructuring, because this restructuring is profitable for some, have been going to the elite, to the top, right? So we know what that looks like, that restructuring looks like on Wall Street, because we have talked about the 1% and how restructuring sometimes benefits the few. What does that look like in our institutions of higher education? It means since the 1970s and more recently, we've had this proliferation of administrators. The proportion of administrators to faculty has grown and grown and grown since this period, and it's part of this process. We're becoming an ever more corporate model in our institutions of higher ed, and it's happening throughout our society. Okay, so why should you or why should any of us care about this? I'm really excited to hear what you all think about this, and you'll have a chance to add your voices, but I'm just going to pose some questions and issues for you to think about why you might actually care about this issue. So here's a question. You can address it, or you can wait till it's time to speak. Do you think that you students benefit from this reliance on low-wage contingent labor? Maybe you might say, yeah, because you might say, Carl, I think of myself as sort of a consumer of education. I'm here and I want to get the best deal. Lower costs are good for me, right? So if labor costs are lower, that's going to be good, right? And so I'll benefit because it's a consumer model that I really subscribe to. You might say, yeah, so I don't see how low-wage labor could hurt, right? And so if that's the sort of your starting point, I guess I would ask you a question, and that would be, if you're benefiting from this low-cost labor, then you would assume that your tuition has been going down and down and down as long as the increasing reliance on contingent labor is happening, right? Is that true? Has your tuition been going down, has become more and more reliant on contingent workers? I think you know that although they've been somewhat successful stabilizing it here, nationwide, tuition is going up and up and up and up, right? And so why is that? There's lots of reasons why tuition continues to go up and up and up. A lot of it is because the public sources of funding for our public institutions of higher education are disappearing. But it also is because your tuition dollars are increasingly going towards this proliferating class of administrators who have big salaries, and they have to administer all of the different labor segments that are developing in this new model of education. So I guess I'm questioning that this is a good thing for you. And what are you getting out of this contingent labor force? Well, you're getting some positive things, as represented by Alexa and Voikita. You're getting hardworking, totally committed, very qualified instructors who will do anything for you, including work for poverty wages. That's a good thing, right? But these people, as we've been talking about, are also overworked. They've got no office hours. They've got no offices, right? So they're flying from jobs from here to there, and so therefore, like, they just don't have the time to devote to the education that you would really benefit from, right? Again, our working conditions are your learning conditions. And what about academic freedom, right? If you thought about academic freedom, you might say, like, that seems like something that professors most worry about. They don't want someone coming in and like telling me what to do in my classroom. But I'm making the case that academic freedom should matter to you as students too, right? So how does contingency, a reliance on adjuncts, affect your academic freedom? Well, if you have no job security, if you're totally vulnerable, then if you raise a controversial issue in the class that the department chair or the president or the board of directors doesn't like, you could be gone, right? That isn't a very positive space for discussing and having this meaningful dialogue around complicated issues that we really need in our institutions of higher education. Okay, I also want to pose something to my fellow faculty members, and then I will pass the podium on to our next speakers. To my fellow full-time faculty members, why should we care about contingency in the labor force? After all, we have job security, and some of us have tenure. We have mostly livable wages, right? We benefit from this system, or so we might think. But I guess my question would be, like, for how long, right? Because the ground seems to be disappearing beneath us. It's 3/4 of the academic labor force that's contingent now. I feel like we're dinosaurs, you know, like we're going to become extinct unless we do something. And there are some places where they've been successful in completely eliminating tenured faculty. And there's some people in this state who would like to do the same thing, right? So this could be the future unless we do something. And I have one more question for you full-time faculty members. This applies to me too. Why have we tolerated this system for so long and let it grow and grow and grow? You know, I think that we find ways to justify all sorts of things. Throughout human history, we've justified all kinds of unjustifiable things. But how do we as full-time faculty members justify this? We talk about how good we are, how qualified we are. We say we must be, you know, sort of better qualified than these other people. But the truth is, if we're being honest, we know that except for our privilege, very little separates us from our qualified and excellent teaching adjuncts, right? So the idea of like our qualifications as a meaningful separation isn't hold much water, right? And I guess just the final comment. I think that we have to think about the integrity of our institutions, right? So like how much inequity is too much where it becomes unsustainable, right? How can we keep talking about education as a public good that like benefits society when it's built on a foundation of inequality, injustice, right? At some point, these things become totally unsustainable, right? And I just was thinking as I was driving into school today, I'm a historian, so I have to make historical reference. Just before his assassination, when Martin Luther King Jr. was in Memphis helping striking sanitation workers, he said to them, what you're doing here today is you're reminding the nation that in this rich nation, it should be a crime to have to work for starvation wages or poverty wages, right? And I was thinking, like, that's what's going on today nationwide. Adjuncts like Voikita and Alexa and Kathleen and all of you are reminding the nation, this is a shame. It's shameful, and it should be a crime. And I'm really excited to talk to you about what we're going to do about it, so I want to have that conversation with you.
I'm an adjunct professor here. I've been here for 8 years teaching psychology. Between speakers, I'm going to read some testimonials from real adjuncts across the nation. These testimonials were collected from the Democrats' House Committee on education and the workforce staff report, the working conditions of contingent faculty in higher education, the just-in-time professor, 2014. Poverty levels. My university pays $2,100 per class, which means even if I worked at 100%, 10 classes per academic year, I would only make $21,000. That figure falls at the poverty level for a family of 4, and that fact was taken from Obamacare facts, federal poverty levels for 2014-15.
Hello everybody, my name is Vakita Nakescu. I'm a historian. I teach at Raritan Valley. I've been teaching here since 2010. So I'm going to read to you drawing on the contributions made by Carl and Alexa. And first of all, there's something I would like to say. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, full-time faculty members, for being here in solidarity, because this is, I know everybody is encouraged to dissociate themselves from adjuncts. Adjuncts are different from us. Adjuncts do it for all sorts of reasons that we necessarily don't understand. So I'm going to read to you a few sort of like myths and facts about adjuncts. What does it mean to be told that, you are not, what does it mean to be constantly misunderstood? Okay? So myth number 1, adjuncts teach because they love teaching and making a positive change in students' lives. Have you ever heard that before? Adjuncts teach just because they love teaching. Yes, the fact is that yes, adjuncts do love teaching, but they also love being compensated fairly for their work. According to a survey by the Coalition of Academic Workforce, the median pay for course, standardized to a 3-credit course, $2,700, and these are national statistics. According to Adjunct Action Research, 79% of adjuncts do not get health insurance at their colleges. 86% do not receive retirement benefits. Adjuncts, you'll say, can purchase health insurance, of course, but given their low earnings, between $20,000 and $25,000 a year, and these are again national statistics, right? Insurance is often beyond their means, right? Full-time instructor pay often starts at $40,000, $50,000, goes up with seniority, right? And they also receive benefits. The adjuncts are not compensated fairly for their work, and teaching is work, okay? We need to make sure that we acknowledge that dimension. Teaching is work that's both visible, the so-called number of credit hours that we teach, that we interact with the students, 3 credit hours a week, right? But there's also a lot of invisible work, right? Which means preparing for classes, reading to stay up to date on recent developments. You don't want your teachers to come here and teach you stuff that was current in the 1970s, right? You want teachers who are dynamic, who spend time reading up on on what's going on in their fields. It means preparing for classes. It means writing syllabi. It means creating course materials. We create assignment sheets, PowerPoints, quizzes, exams. We answer student emails within 24 hours, right? Because that's what the expectation is, right? We are, in addition to grading, maintaining, and updating student records. Also, by the logic of myth number 1, should only people who hate teaching be compensated for their work? Right? Myth number 2, many adjuncts have other careers in business, administration, and other fields. Today, adjuncts amount for 3/4 of the academic workforce. This is a marked increase from the 22% of faculty which we were in the 1970s. So from 22% to 75, 76%. It's a huge increase, right? And many adjuncts have prepared all their lives to be educators. In the survey that I quoted before, 94% of part-time faculty have some level of graduate degree. 42% have a master's degree, 30% have a doctorate, and 16.7% a professional degree or other terminal degree. And 7% are ABDs, completed all their work except dissertation. So adjuncts have invested years of work and a lot of money, as proved by their advanced degrees, in order to attain the qualifications that are required by law in order for us to be able to teach in a college classroom, right? Many of us, we are professional educators. We're not people who come in, like occasionally to teach a class. A lot of us are professional educators. These are our careers. These are what we've been preparing to do. For many years, we've been thinking and reading and writing about how to better educate students. We are not here, like part-time. This is a full-time commitment for us. And then, of course, myth number 3, that most adjuncts prefer to teach part-time. And that's, again, not true. 75% of adjuncts have either looked for a position or are looking for a position or are trying to make sort of ends meet, right? In order to make ends meet, most adjuncts teach at 2 or 3 universities. 2 or 3 universities. Think about it. Think about 2 or 3 different email addresses, 3 different parking permits. I have them in my car, I can show you. Think about, I don't know, learning 3 different systems, right? Getting along with 3 different sets of colleagues, or, just think about the paperwork involved and how hard it is to get used to all that and switch from one to the other. And all this energy is taken away from teaching. All this energy, all this work we have to do is to the detriment of teaching, of focusing on just teaching, which is what we really want to do, right? And the adjuncts are called road scholars, right? The highway flyers, right? I'm not kidding. So many colleges restrict the number of courses that adjuncts can teach so that we're not eligible for benefits. What does that mean? It means that the need for our work is here. The demand is here. We're necessary. It's just that the legal framework and the trends, the larger trends in society that Carl has outlined allow these things to happen, right? So in the survey, 54 adjuncts were teaching at multiple institutions, 29% at 2, 11% at 3 institutions, and 6% at 4 institutions. Imagine putting together poverty level income by working at 4 institutions, having 4 part-time jobs. Myth number 4, finally, adjuncts only teach introductory courses. They don't participate in the life of their institutions. That is not true. Adjuncts participate in their life of their colleges in many ways other than teaching. They volunteer on campus, they organize events, and they mentor students. They do research, they publish their work, they attend professional conferences, and most of the time we don't receive any support from the institution. So it's this work of research, of publication, that goes into teaching again. And it's never recognized, and we're never compensated for it. Students benefit from all this. It is time for colleges to acknowledge adjuncts' contribution.
No health benefits. Quote, because I was also the sole support of my 2 children, both of whom are gifted and honor students, I relied on Medicaid to pay for the medical bills for my daughter. And during the time I taught at the community college, I earned so little that I had to sell my plasma on Tuesdays and Thursdays to pay for her daycare costs.
Hi, my name is Michelle Brazier. I'm a faculty member in the English department. And last semester, I had an opportunity to interview a number of staff, faculty, department chairs who work at the college and whose work supporting adjuncts helps this almost non-functional system roll out every day. Because you go to your classes and your instructors are there, whether they're adjuncts or faculty. And the college can only function that way because of the investment on both sides. So what I wanted to do was to talk to the people who are trying to help support the adjuncts in their daily work and to ask them, what isn't working? What is working? In your little niche of the college, what do you do that makes it function? And what would you love to have the college do to help you make it function better? I am now going through all of those conversations, and so this is a progress report on what I will hopefully share with the president and with the whole college before spring break. The three big issues that seem to affect adjuncts from the perspective of those who support you. Again, this is the perspective of the people who work with you and for you to help you do your jobs. In order of the number of hits I got from across the college, adjunct integration with the college community was tops. And what that meant was a range of things depending on who I was talking to. But one of them just was about real estate, geography. Where do your adjunct instructors have their office? Uniformly in departments, those whose adjunct instructors had their offices with the faculty members who were full-time, regardless of whether they were in that category or in the other category, they said integrating adjunct office space or time on campus with the full-time faculty is an issue. The departments who had their faculty integrated said, this is what we love, and those who didn't have them said, this is a problem. The other thing that had to do with adjunct integration had to do with orientation, understanding the college, understanding not only where is my classroom, but where's the academic support center? Where's advising and counseling? Where's the disabilities office? Where's the first year experience office? These are all pieces of valuable, important information for students. You need to know this. But if you don't know it, your instructors need to know it and where you're going to get that information. We have a program at the beginning of the year called All College Day. It's our first day back. Many people attend, right? But it is not required. We can't require it because we can't pay for people to come, right? The reality then is that if people can't come or if they're not compensated for coming, they may not just get that information, or it may come in an email, or it may come in parts, or it may come from a department chair, or it may come from a coordinator. The problem is it may come or it may not come. And the college doesn't know who's getting the information and who isn't getting the information. We just can't know. So that problem of academic integration, adjunct integration in the college, it makes it harder for the adjuncts who don't have the information, and it makes it harder for the college because we don't know who those adjuncts are, and we also don't know whether the students are getting the information too. So that's number one, adjunct integration with the college. The second, adjunct hiring, expectations, and accountability. What does this mean? Sometimes an adjunct instructor is hired the day before a class meets. Did you know that? What does that mean? They have to come up with a syllabus the day before the class meets. They have to figure out all of that other information about where they're going to send you and where their class is and how do you deal with tech support. I didn't mention that. That's another one, right? So, and that's a part of the system, right? Sometimes people have to be hired at the last minute. On the flip side, I'm sorry, your class is under-enrolled. We don't have a section for you. class canceled, last minute. Where does that person get that $2,100? I can't remember what the salary we get here. Where does that, all of a sudden, imagine you are working and your boss says, I'm sorry, we don't need you for the next 4 months. No paycheck for you. This is a regular occurrence. Fortunately, we do pretty well here, right? We try, but it's a part of the system, right? So that problem with hiring provides for a lack of stability for everyone. It's a lack of stability for the departments because they may be scrambling to find someone. It's a lack of stability for the employees because they may find at the last minute they're out of a job, right? Someone mentioned office hours. Adjunct instructors are compensated for contact hours in the classroom. The college does not compensate for office hours. If your adjunct instructors have office hours for you, that is coming on their own dime, right? And then finally, this is something that, again, these are not, if they were easy problems, they would have been solved, right? I do not envy the president. I do not envy the people who are responsible for helping us to figure out these problems. But because they're contingent, they cannot get their contract until the first day of class, which means that adjunct instructors frequently are teaching 2, 3, 4 weeks before their first paycheck. Can you imagine starting your job at Bridgewater Commons and them saying, I'm sorry, you're not going to get paid for another month and a half? Maybe that happens, but it shouldn't. And I've talked to the people about why this happens, and there's always an explanation for why it happens. But it's just not good enough. We have got to figure out these kinds of labor issues. The third is just communication, right? And it relates to the first one. It relates to integration. How do you communicate with people who are reading on their phones in their cars between things, or who teach only in the evening when the departments are closed, who are never on campus when the chair of the department is there? This is something that is a frustration for the people who support adjuncts as well as the adjuncts themselves. They want to be able to have contact with the adjuncts, but they can't tell them, I'm only here from 8:30 to 4, come and see me, because that professor, that adjunct instructor may be teaching at the high school, or may be teaching at Kane College, or may be teaching at another institution. Or they may have a job at another place. The communication issues are very, very difficult. And the college has done things to help with that, right? They have created new positions to help make that better. They have created support staff to help do that better. But again, these are tiny baby steps to a systemic problem. So I talked a lot. Where every person I talked to identified a problem, either had some kind of solution that they would like, or thought, this is something that we need to work on, all right? Just a couple. So increase opportunities to teach more. We already know the list of reasons why that doesn't happen, and the big one is benefits. But is there a way to push that, to give people an opportunity to teach more, to create more full-time positions? And a full-time position automatically changes all of the calculus of what I had said, because it creates an investment in the college that goes both ways. From the college to the faculty member, and the faculty member to the college. It's like getting married, right? Or getting committed. All of those other problems become easier to cope with. Have college-wide programs that are compensated, so that people will make the time, figure out how to do it to come, so that they feel professionally validated for the investment that they're making. Not just because you love it, but because you are a professional and should be compensated for your pay, for your time, And that kind of compensation for college-wide programs, professional development programs, that benefits the adjuncts and the college, right? Finding a balance between investment of time and effort and the incentives that help to improve it. Gotta find a way to do that. And the last thing I'm going to say is that it cannot all be about money. It is fundamentally about money, but it cannot all be about money. It's got to be about will, it's got to be about leadership, and it's got to be about community-based solutions. And I hope that this is the start of a conversation about all that goes beyond conversation into some kind of action. Thank you.
Job security. Job stability? None. As adjuncts, we never know if we will be rehired from semester to semester. The process for hire or rehire has no transparency. Classes for adjuncts are assigned or canceled less than a week before the semester begins, every semester.
Okay, I'll come up and say something. Is it still like a speak out teaching thing or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have an announcement, but I also want to just say, I started teaching college in 2006, and I started as an adjunct, and I was actually teaching at 3 different institutions over 4 different departments. And I barely cobbled together at the time, I think, $27,000, and I literally taught 30 credits a semester. It was horrible. It was absolutely terrible, and I feel like if you want to look at what real work is, that is real work. And all the things you were saying about just having to travel so much, I mean, I think I put something crazy like 15,000 miles on my car. You know, I was constantly going in and out of New York City and this and that and the other thing, and it was insane. It was absolutely insane. I really believe deeply that this is a problem that needs a solution, and I really hope that some of you are going to be able to help be part of that solution. I also had an announcement to make. There's a social action meeting. We're trying to foster a culture of collaborative social actions such as this, like teach-ins and things like this, to get people more aware of what's happening in their world and more able to feel that they have some agency in making the change that they really want to see. So there's going to be a social action meeting. Bring your ideas and your enthusiasms. Tuesday, March 3rd, from 4 p.m. to 5:30. It's going to be in S308. If you have any other questions about that, feel free to come contact me. Basically, we would just like to form a coalition of people who really can tell us what issues they feel are important so that we can continue to have events like this and can continue to make social action together. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maria DeFilippis. I'm president of the Faculty Federation here on campus. Our union represents both full-time and adjunct faculty. And first, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to attend, students, faculty, staff. We appreciate your support. I also want to plug the idea that unions help workers achieve the benefits and the salaries that they deserve, and I'd ask you to support your unions in any way that you can. And finally, I just want to mention, and I hope this doesn't embarrass our president, but I invited the president of the college to come to this event, and he did show up, and we appreciate President Mike McDonough's appearance here. And I also want to tell you that in our discussions, he and I, over the last 6 or 7 months that he's been here, he has always shown not only support for, but a real appreciation for our adjunct faculty. And I know he's with us in our effort to try and get benefits and wages and all of the resources they deserve here at Raritan Valley. So thank you again for coming. I think Alexa's going to do a question and answer now.
So I think at this point, we would just love to hear from students, and adjunct and full-time faculty who may have something they want to say, whether you want to come up and say it or just ask a question, and we can just, it's a large group to try to have a discussion, but to the best of our ability, just kind of put it out there to everyone. So does anybody have any questions?
Can they come up for the cameras?
You may come up, or if you don't want to come up and you just want to stay there where you are and just ask a question, that's certainly fine too. So does anybody have any questions or comments at this point?
Can we hear from the president?
I can't answer that question.
Can you
you hear me okay?
Sure.
Oh, then you can hear me. No, I mean, I was invited by Maria, by text. That's how close we are. So I just want to, it's very easy for a president to show up and say, we can't do it without you. Thank you. That's very easy to do. It happens to be true. We can't fulfill the mission of this institution without adjunct faculty. And I would remind us all that to the student in the class on the first day, you're not an adjunct faculty member. You're their faculty member. And you do a remarkable job. But I want to come back to something my colleague from the English department said, because that's really the heart of it. The heart of it is we know that on some level this is not right and it's exploitive. How do we begin to fix the problem? Some, I think, are common sense and straightforward and easy. As a college, we must integrate you into our community. You are our community. There's no difference here. There's no division here. The tricky one is the money piece. It is just money. I never realized that my job would be so much about money. And so I'm not going to shift the blame. It is my responsibility. But I will get on my political soapbox for one moment and say that the deliberate defunding of public education in this country is a scandal and a shame. Because what it has done, right? What it has done is put it on the backs of the people who can least afford it, yet most need it. Our students. So I constantly, every day, go home hoping that the lights don't go off, that I can pay everybody, and so it's a complicated equation, but I certainly understand the urgent need to tackle it. And I will say one other, see, this gets me into trouble. This just gets me into trouble. It's why I will be, searching for another job soon. And it's got really, it's got everything to do with this, and it's got nothing to do with this. So I'll just say it. We have got to stop blaming teachers in this country for everything that is wrong with public education. K through 12 and higher education. I am sick of it, and I don't want to hear it anymore. It took us a long time to get where we are today, and it will take thoughtful conversation and collaboration to get us out of it. The solution are the teachers. I'm standing here because of a teacher. I have my career because of a teacher. Most of us do. So think about that teacher and thank that teacher, because she got me here today. So I really want to thank you. It's very courageous to stand up and speak in the manner you do and not hear it be heard in a disingenuous way. I want to thank the students for being here. I think we've got a lot of opportunity, but this is hard work. I can't promise anything. I can promise to listen. So I've spoken way too much. This is not about me. It's about you guys. So,
one of the things that I've noticed or that I know from talking to adjunct professors in my department, and it really hurts them, is that some of them have been here 10 years, 12 years, and there's no kind of seniority when it comes to getting a section. They're expecting to have the section to teach, and some new person has been hired and they're teaching that section, and they have told, we don't have a section for you. You know, I think that it's heartbreaking to me as an administrator working with the adjuncts, because I do see the hard work that they put into teaching us, and they go above and beyond. You know, they give everything. I see this from some of the adjuncts in my department. So is there some way that we can establish some kind of seniority, so at least they can, it's not a solution, I know that, but seniority, so for the ones that are good, who's been here, who have proven themselves, that they can have some kind of security that they'll get a section if available, not some person off the street is going to get it.
So does anyone want to speak to that? Either anybody in the administration or among the faculty who, sort of this idea of the lack of seniority among adjuncts certainly is a problem for adjuncts. I think it also becomes a problem very directly for students, because if there is a lack of job security, even for somebody who's been here for 10 years or more, working, invested in the school, there's going to be, you know, this upheaval if they're not back, or if they've been not very good at their job for 10 years, which could also happen if there's no accountability. If you have 75% of people working full time, I think the question quickly becomes, who is even available to make sure that these adjuncts, who, as we know, many are so good at what they do, but if they're not, who's there to find out? And if they're like fabulous and the best in the world, who's there to find out about that? So I think that again becomes that sort of unsustainable numbers problem. There just aren't enough people here who are here full time to even know who, you know, the department chairs change, and then the department chair may not even be fully aware that somebody's been here for so long. So I think a lot of it is, again, that systemic problem where no matter how much everybody wants to do their part, the system itself is working against all of us.
I'd like to just add, as president of the union, we negotiate a contract, a collective bargaining agreement every 3 years for adjunct faculty. And I've been president 5 years, or maybe almost 6. And both times, or 3 times, we've gone to the table in that period of time, and we have proposed a seniority provision to our collective bargaining agreement. The way it works here, though, is the Board of Trustees, who are appointed by various people in the state, the governor, the county freeholders of both Somerset and Hunterdon County, they negotiate with us. They have a team of people who negotiate the table with us. And they have turned down the concept of seniority for adjunct faculty each time we've brought it up. The only way to really have our voices heard is, of course, if we collectively speak louder. I'm sure that someone's going to mention the fact that we have some petitions going around, and we're looking for signatures, and we'll be presenting these petitions to the Board of Trustees at their next meeting in March. I invite you all to attend. It's the 3rd Tuesday in March, whatever that date is, and help us impress upon the Board of Trustees how important it is to appropriately and honestly negotiate with adjunct faculty, because at the table is where we can get some of these benefits for our faculty.
Could I just ask a question on that?
Sure.
What becomes their reasoning against such a...
Often there isn't a reason. It's a question of, no, we're not going to discuss
We don't
seniority.
have time for that? Okay.
Not time, but not an interest in
There's gotta be-
providing that benefit.
So if there's no reason, why are they getting away with not having any kind of movement on this?
Because I believe, and again, this is personal, there has to be a groundswell indicating to them that this is critical. We show up at the table with our positions, they have theirs, and unless from the outside they get the idea that this is an important thing, like a petition that everyone presents with these lists of things on it, their position is we're not going to grant that benefit. That's not one that we should grant.
Because it's my understanding that that rule is basically out there in many other institutions
You're probably
and
right.
unions.
Very few adjunct faculty have seniority. There are a couple, though, in the state that do. I'd like to tell you which counties, but they slip my mind.
Because I went through this myself. I've been here 10 years. I'm in my 11th year. And because of certain other issues, I was singled out twice to miss a class. And, you know, these are also backed up. I don't know about how it works in other departments, but I know everyone has observations, right? And you have to have an observation in your first 3 years, at least twice a year, something like that. And, of course, you build up a resume of observations, and all of those are are good, you know, then the seniority issue along with observation record is kind of no-brainer.
And from what I've seen, it's just at will in my department. I work in the science department, and I just see it depending on the chair, you know, because it's a rotating position. It's just at will. And
Well,
then
that's the point of all of this,
Right,
is not
just
allowing a
at will.
department chair to just have the whimsy of their own, you know, subjective notions about who they like to give a class to and who they don't, especially if somebody like me, you know, raised some issues in the past, so she gets, you know, a little bit annoyed,
right.
you know, and it's like, I'm sorry, but, you know, if you're annoyed, you know, be a little bit more professional about how you go about things, and perhaps we won't have these issues.
And another point I'd like to bring up that's part of this is I've seen as well with our adjuncts. And I'm speaking of the good, qualified people who put in the work just like any faculty member. Is that when we have a position available for a tenure track, they don't seem to even be noticed for it. It's someone from the outside comes in and takes that position. And this person has been there for years, blood, sweat, and tears, doing everything, giving everything, and they're just looked over. And I just think that's just not right. It's a major problem, and we need to look at that as well. Why aren't we hiring to get a tenure track position? That's so wrong.
Did you have a comment?
I'm just curious if the board, if you guys don't like what the board's not doing, like, why don't you make a movement and strike? If you guys have,
Oh, we're not allowed to in New Jersey.
You're not allowed to strike.
Yeah, that violates the New Jersey state law. We're not allowed to strike.
What would happen if you did?
We would lose our jobs.
But you guys have you say you have no job security. Isn't it worth it? Will they fire 75% of the college all at once?
But Christie would back
strike?
up the law probably.
I'm just saying, can they replace you guys if
We
you
have
all
a
went
no
on
strike
strike?
clause in New Jersey.
But you have to, drastic times call for drastic measures. Like,
Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
It's true that it's illegal to strike, but workers have broken the law and gone on strike in our neighboring state, New York, even recently and historically. They've made it illegal to strike, and they did it. And so it's just a calculation as to whether you want to take that risk or not. But it's not, just because the law says it, doesn't mean you can't do it, right? So I think your question is good. And the other thing I wanted to say to your comment about, well, why don't they want to back up this idea for job security? Well, why doesn't Walmart, want to give like full-time, secure, lasting jobs to their employees? The management, and it's not a direct correlation, but I think it's similar, likes the idea of flexibility. So they talk about the value of flexible labor forces. That's one of these overlapping areas between this flexible labor force and in other sectors. And so it's nice for management to be able to do this over here and do that and move around a flexible labor force, but it's bad for working people.
So I'm a student, and I was just talking to one of my professors, my adjunct professor last semester, and I came to the realization I haven't had one full-time professor at my time at Raritan, and the fact that they're not being treated fairly is horrible. But I want to also think of how would helping the adjuncts affect my tuition? I know that sounds really greedy and horrible, but I come to Raritan, a community college, because it is cheaper, and you get the same, better, in my opinion, education. But what's the downfall in our tuition? Because it's obviously going to have to rise. Because we're, like the president said, it's going to land on our backs because we don't have the support of our government.
So, does anybody want to, Brandon, did you want to?
I just want to say two things really quick. Carl made my point, and there's lots of articles about how they're making education more like Walmart. It's no knock on Walmart, but they do want easy contingent labor so they can have them work at will. And so if people at Walmart strike, they can get fired. Right? And so I'm so proud of full-time faculty that are standing up for their colleagues or their peers and saying, we're in this with you and we have some privilege and we want to stand up with you. But who is Walmart going to listen to, right? They're not necessarily going to listen to the workers, but they're going to listen to their consumers, their customers. And I just want to say, I don't want to look at education as a business, but to my friend who said, why don't you strike? The board will listen to you, right? And so the faculty, they're at these meetings and they're going to continue to raise their voice and do events like this. But I tell you who the board really cares about the people who are paying those tuition bills. And if the people say, I want some full-time faculty who have some office hours, who I can visit, who I can come see, who's got extra time for me, and that's important to me, that's going to raise some eyebrows. And I'm not saying it's just you, right? Full-time faculty, adjunct, students, we have to work together to say, as Mike said, as our president said, you know, at some point this isn't right. What are we collectively going to do? And just really quick, I know you want to jump in. So to the second point, right, how is this going to affect your tuition bill? And I think Carl can speak to this too. Historically, it hasn't always been this way, right? The vision of the community college was, you know, different parts of the government were going to pay, students were going to pay some tuition, the state was going to pay some tuition, the counties were going to pay tuition. It's being defunded, right? And it's coming out on your tuition bill, but it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be on the backs of the people who can't do it, on the backs of the adjuncts, and the backs of the students. Our government, our elected officials who we elect should be held accountable to give us quality, affordable education. And that's not a dream, that's the vision of the community.
When community colleges started, this one, I was in high school when this college started, and I began my career here as an adjunct professor. And when this college started, it was funded 1/3 by the state, 1/3 by the two counties, then it was only Somerset County, 1/3 by Somerset County, and 1/3 by student tuition. Now student tuition is almost 70% of the funding of this institution.
Say that number again.
Almost 70%, from a third. So again, the public, people that you elect are not funding your education.
Anyway, excellent points. I just wanted to interject that Walmart did strike on the biggest shopping day of the year, and it got them a labor raise. So there is, there is.
Well, and I think that's kind of the point is, you know, Carl said there is a law, but, you know, we need to decide at what point we do what we need to do, and the students need to decide, and adjuncts, and full-timers, and administrators sticking their neck out. Everybody's got to decide if they think it's not right. What are they willing to do and say to say, hey, we got to change this?
I just want to add one thing. What kind of lawyers you have to, like King said, you know, if it's
The time is always right to do what is right.
May I ask one thing about how the adjunctification of teaching is affecting students every day? You don't have a continuity. You need, if you're a student who has had an adjunct instructor for all your student career, whom are you going to contact when you need a recommendation letter? What are you going to do? The records are kept at the college for better or worse, so that's a good thing. If you need a mentor, if you need somebody to discuss things, we're told, you know, like go and talk to your advisors, and that's a great thing. But at the same time, we can also perform these roles for you. If we have office hours, it's not like, in the end, it's not like the college doesn't say, oh, don't ever have office hours. Of course, but any office hours, any hours that we spend here are not paid, right? So there's this pressure for us to, you know, like deal with students as expediently as possible without getting into trouble, but, you know, like not go the extra mile, which we would like to go for you. You know, like give recommendations, suggest careers for you. You're interested in history, perhaps you should consider this, you know, like explore this more carefully, look for internships. Here's, you know, like contact my peers for you. You know, like these are all these things that we could do for you. Right? These are all these things that your full-time professors are doing for you. And unfortunately, your full-time professors are only 25% of the labor force. So why not have that experience in each and every one of your classes? So, thank you.
We do have petitions around, and I think some of us are, I can stay, and I think hopefully some others can stay so we can help you, point you in the direction. There are also, as I said, some articles. There's been a lot of news about the adjunct situation. I hope it's hitting kind of a critical mass nationwide. So there's a lot of information. There's a lot more to learn. Come to the Social Action Network meeting.
Yeah, Tuesday.
At
4. Somerset. 308.
As
just, I didn't make my foot loud.
I'm going to take the authority. I'm sorry to do the a closing statement, but I think whenever we deal with system-wide issues, there is this pressure to think that if one person gets it better, then I might get it worse. If they get a decent salary, a living wage, then my tuition might go up. And that's a really natural thing, and I think it's something that we should all ask and look at, but then I think that it's so important to remember that it's not a zero-sum game. If your professors are making a living wage, you will be better off because your, what was it, Carl? Your learning, our working conditions are your learning conditions, and that's so true. So there's always more to learn. If you think that, oh, well, if they get it better, I might get it worse, I would just urge you to read more, learn more, look into it, find the people who are writing about it. All kinds of people are, until you hit on something that makes sense, and there will be something that makes sense because it hasn't always been like this. So thank you again so much for coming. Please do find the petitions and everything else. Thank you.
Okay, so I was wondering, how did this this whole teach-in originate?
So that's a great question. In California, I believe the person is still anonymous. She hasn't wanted to be named, but in California, I forget at which school, there was an adjunct several months ago now, maybe even 6 or 7 months ago, who said we should have a national adjunct walkout day, right? Because if 75% of the labor force in higher ed is contingent and we all leave, then they'll realize that we're necessary. So in a lot of schools, I believe that what's happened is rather than actually walking out and striking, there's been this drive to educate, and that's what we wanted to do here. We didn't want it to be something so negative that we just left class, but that we educated our students, many of whom I think don't even know the word adjunct before today, to just realize what's going on at their own school.
Okay, so was this a scheduled event, or was there like something that happened to bring this on?
So really it came through the union. So we are, and it's a little unusual, I think we might be the only college in the state where we are in the same union. The adjunct and the full-time are in the same union. And so we had so much support from the union.
Take care, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, so great to see you. So we had just sort of I want to say a faculty community-wide effort to put something together. This was an idea raised by one person, but was added to by somebody else, and then it came together like that. Okay. So it's been in the works just really for about a week, and things kind of solidified over the last few days. So,
okay. Yeah. Was this influenced by the faculty contracts that the full-time just received?
Actually, no, in the sense that the adjunct faculty member in California who planned this day or who sort of began this movement, this was the day that they had picked, and so that was this day.
Okay. That's another question. I heard that some classes are taking place here. Some professors chose to bring the classes here. Is that true? Or?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
So I think Professor Lenskog brought his class here, and I certainly had invited my students, but I didn't have a class right now. So.
Okay. So are there? This is just based on the day that's scheduled in California.
Exactly.
Are the faculty, are the adjuncts, are they looking for a new contracts, or do they have specific demands for a new contract?
So we are currently in negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to defer to Maria DeFilippis, the president, on that. I think when we're in negotiations, there's very little that we can actually talk about. But again, that turned out to be sort of coincidentally that it all happened at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think? What can students do to help? I guess convince the government, the state government, and the county government to increase tuition. Is there something that students can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of things. So my first thing as an English professor is always going to be you can read more, you can learn more. But I think that there are actually some really specific things that you can do. It's the freeholders in the counties, in both Hunterdon and Somerset, who ultimately make these decisions. So going to local meetings, paying attention to your local elections is huge. I know that it's very intimidating. It was very intimidating for me when I was 18 and I was new to voting. I still find local stuff sometimes difficult to keep up with. It's obviously not televised the way national things are. But also, I do think at the state level, there's a lot of control that the governor and other high officials at the state level have. They both have literal control over the way that schools are funded, but they also kind of create a culture. Right now and in the last few years, it's been a very negative culture. It's been very negative to teachers' unions, but I think it's also been negative to teachers themselves. That's both at the kindergarten through 12th grade and in higher education. So I think reaching out to, at the bare minimum, if you're voting, that's great. And paying attention specifically to which candidates are, favorable to funding higher education, to funding public education, but also actually reaching out to, write to the governor, write to the freeholders, find out who's making these decisions. It's actually easier than ever to do that kind of thing. So it can sound intimidating, but it's usually a quick Google search and shoot off an email to them, and that's it. And I've heard before that when they get just a handful of emails on one issue, they actually take that really seriously because they can assume there must be many people talking about this for me to get a couple of emails about it. So I think that can be hugely effective.
Okay. Now, as far as funding goes, do you believe that this is the main problem with the state and the county governments, or is there something else as far as funding goes that can maybe help resolve this issue?
In terms of, are you asking, is that where the funding problem is?
Yeah, is that the main problem? Is that where it really lies? Does it really lie in the promise that the counties had, or the counties would pay for 1/3 and the state would pay for another third, or is there another issue that we should be looking at as well?
No, I think that's primarily for the institution of RVCC and any other community college in the state of New Jersey. I think that's primarily where this specific issue comes in. Certainly at the federal level, we have also seen pullbacks on some kinds of funding. In terms of for students paying their tuition, there are also grants that are no longer being funded the way they were. But for what the tuition at RVCC is to begin with, that would be state and county.
Okay.
I believe. I'm fairly certain I'm right about that.
Okay. So I wanted to ask, is Obama's proposal to provide free community college to I don't know the rules to it, but I think it's high school graduates that meet certain requirements. Is that going to be a big help to adjuncts? Is that going to resolve some of these issues?
I don't know if it would resolve it directly. I don't know enough about his proposal, which I've been meaning to read about it.
Would it put more money on the local level?
Yeah, I think at the very least, I'll say, if it doesn't have a direct impact, I think that one thing that it would do is show a clear investment in public education from the head of our government, from the president. And if we could, certainly get that from the Senate, from the House of, if we got that kind of investment, that visible, I think it would have an effect on the whole culture of how we talk about higher education. Yeah.
Okay. And I wanted to ask you, what makes you love teaching? And I'm guessing that you're putting up with a lot of this stuff because it's something that you truly believe in. What makes you do this? Was there something that happened, like maybe a teacher or something? Yeah. What happened?
Yeah. So it is. I'll try not to go on. I can talk for a long time about why I love my job, but so I'm actually certified to teach high school English. And when I moved to New Jersey with my brand new teacher certification and my brand new master's degree, this was the first job that I got. So I had always thought, wouldn't it be amazing to teach in a community college? I'm not really sure why. I just thought that would be great. But I didn't think of it as necessarily something that was going to happen, but I applied for the job and I got the job. And really from the first day, it's just felt like this is where I belong. So what I love so much is that students come here students come here for all kinds of reasons. And we have students from all over, any kind of diversity accounting you can think of. Preparedness levels and financial backgrounds and certainly cultural backgrounds, which is one thing I love about it here. But one of the things we do often have is students who didn't necessarily shine in high school. We have some students, certainly, who do. But I think we have a lot of students who are giving it a shot again at higher education, again at coming back to school, even though maybe high school was tough. And so I have so much respect for our students just to begin with. And then I think having made that decision, a lot of them, they get kind of turned on to what education can be. And so reading something and hearing students for the first time kind of come face to face with an issue and get excited about it or get interested in it. I mean, I see that happen on campus all the time. I think in a nutshell, that's really what I love about being here.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And just so I get an understanding of how the contracts work, is it every 3 years that?
It's typical. Most of our contracts have been every 3 years. In the last few years, though, we've been doing some 1-year contracts or 2-year contracts. And most of that in the full-time area is dependent upon the state laws that are being passed regarding health care and contributions to health care. And so because the one contract is 1 year, other people will go for a 1-year contract. We are right now just negotiating an open contract. It could be a 3-year one, depending on what happens. But it also could be a 1-year contract like the one that the full-time faculty just agreed to in January.
Okay. Are they currently working for a contract right now, the adjuncts?
Yes, the
Okay.
adjuncts are in negotiation. The full-time faculty settled, and the contract was approved by the board in its January meeting.
Okay.
Maybe it was its February meeting, but January, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
And I want to ask you, so
Yes.
what makes you love teaching, and what makes you like believe in your job?
Oh, my students make me love teaching.
Okay.
I mean, I feel connected because I'm very old. I've been teaching here 24 years. Before that, I was an attorney for 14 years. So I think you keep me connected to the current world. And so you give me energy and vigor, and you make me want to know about what's happening. I have to admit that I probably wouldn't be online or on Facebook or Twitter or anything else if it wasn't for my students who keep me sort of connected to what's happening in the real world. You do.
Well,
And that's why I love teaching.
Thank you for your time.
Ah, thank you.